All right, joining us today on Pirate Radio Live of the Charlotte Observer, my guy Shane Connuck. Shane, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. How are you?
Doing great. Big ball game this weekend. ECU and Charlotte's homecoming here. Hall of Fame induction ceremony going on as well. A lot of big things going on. What's the feel around Charlotte about this ball game?
It's always exciting whenever ECU plays Charlotte, like we've talked about throughout this year, like we talked about any time these North Carolina rivals meet up. But this year, Charlotte especially, it's always an opportunity for the Niners to not only get. I mean, they've gotten some big wins before in this particular game, but getting with the way this season's been going later in the year with expansion of Jerry Richardson Stadium looming here in Charlotte as this program's looking to get to new heights. It's always one of the bigger weekends that we just look forward to throughout the season. Obviously, the ESPN deal has several games end up on Friday nights and end up on national stages in a lot of ways. But there's something that means even more when you have the local matchup that Charlotte and ECU present.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was thinking about it, just like this matchup on paper. This just seems like a meaningless game. 5-4, 5-3, 1-7. The spread's 29.5. But I know both these teams have this matchup circled, just given the 2-year history of this matchup. So, how do you think this game goes? Do you think like 29.5 points? Obviously, it seems like a blowout. But do you think Charlotte can stay in this one?
I do. I do. I think Charlotte is a strong football team with that you never know what you're going to get, especially since Grayson Loftus has been playing. And so I do see the Niners covering.
Yeah, and their last game, I guess, was 2 weeks ago against North Texas, and they were up 17-7. North Texas, obviously one of the top teams in this conference. What do you think they're looking to take from that game into this one?
Dude, I mean, that like you said, they were we were in that one, then just put it on toward the end of that one, and so I think Charlotte really is going to look to continue to start fast, continue to get its offense moving as quickly as it can early in the game is going to be key, especially when you know that it could end up being somewhat lower scoring, end up defenses could shine a little bit more. It's going to be key to just getting out early.
Yeah, in the last two games from ECU, Tulsa, and Temple, we've seen them put up over 40 points, over 500 yards. They ran for over 300 yards against Temple in Philadelphia last weekend. How does Charlotte defense looks, and do you think they can stop the run? Do you think they can stop Caton Hauser offensively?
I think they can. This is a unit that is taking some stride that has been strong. Even though I do see Charlotte's defense showing up a little bit better this week against East Carolina.
Yeah, and so you got Grayson Loftus at quarterback, and he's been pretty good since he started filling in. What's the run game looking like for Charlotte?
Feels like it'll be a lot of him, a little bit more of the backs, but honestly, I would guess a little bit more Loftus using his legs from what I've heard, what I've been seeing headed in to this week. I
All
may see a
right.
little bit more
Eh,
Loftus movement. Yeah.
yeah, and it's funny. Both teams are saying like, we don't like them, they don't like us. Just how do you think it's a rivalry? Because Charlotte is not. It's a young program. ECU obviously has been around for quite a while, and I feel like both fan bases are hesitant to call it a rivalry just because I don't know. You don't really get a good feel of this matchup early on so far. What do you think?
I agree. I think that this is I agree with the fans who see the rivalry. I think that when you have a young program like Charlotte in a new conference, first off, it's not a football program that has a ton of history, here in University City. And so this is a program that since about 2014 when it had its first season and a member of the Conference USA, it's gotten up to the American, having an in-state rival like ECU to play them at home, on the road, every single year, every other year at home, and it's just the geographic aspect of it and the conference part of it, and the fact that they could be even considered somewhat similar level schools in a pretty growing conference of the American. I think it truly is, even if not immediately, may not always seem like it. No, this Charlotte ECU is a rivalry.
Alrighty, and 4 games left on the schedule for Charlotte. East Carolina this weekend, obviously, and then UTSA, Georgia, and Tulane. What do you think happens those last 4 games? Do you think they get a win?
Yeah, Charlotte's not. These guys, I mean, with the way that how tough they are coached by Tim Alvin. This is a team that even if like they're gonna be in games, they're gonna fight, and like we saw in that North Texas game, it's not like even when it ends up getting so lopsided, it still is that Charlotte has a lot of fight in itself at some point in these games, and so I think looking ahead, I don't see Charlotte winless through the rest of the season.
Tim Albin, I'm a big fan of Tim Albin. I think he's a good coach. I watched him at Ohio for the years he was the head coach there, 3 straight 10-win seasons. Just what are the big differences you see from him other than Biff Poggi the last couple of seasons?
Yeah, I mean it's obviously a energy from the the guy on the sideline feels like it might be a little bit toned down, but no, Coach Albin is fired up. Coach Albin is a football guy, and he has these guys play hard. He hasn't played tough, and it feels like yes, it's a different kind of culture, very different than with the Poggi. And I think really looking toward bringing in players from all over, from maybe from the South, just different guys who Biff Poggi was recruiting versus obviously Coach Albin and certain guys who had come with him, certain guys who had been looking to get to the American. You have all different reasons why people look to transfer into the American Conference, and especially to a school in a geographic location like Charlotte. And I think with Biff Poggi, it just felt a little bit more like this was a program that you want student athletes were looking at it in the transfer portal. This is a place where I can move to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I can then be set up with a lot of business opportunities beyond when I graduate and then set my life up in Charlotte. And I think maybe you had more guys who had roots kind of in this part of the Southeast. And I feel like now, and not that I'm saying any like specific numbers or anything, but it feels like now it's even more kind of, as we just move forward, a more kind of really national program where people might be coming to Charlotte to look to put roots down here in Charlotte. Very much still, people looking to come here at one of many stops in their careers. And so it feels like now maybe Coach Albin hopefully will end up having an even wider net of recruits as this program looks to keep building and growing.
One more thing on ECU and Charlotte, and then we'll get into some NASCAR. What are the keys to victory for Charlotte this weekend, and who do you think needs to step up for this team to get the job done?
So for Charlotte and ECU this week, I think that the Niners are going to have to, like I said earlier, start fast, manage the run well, and just get out in front early. And for ECU, it would just be about having its defense,
Yeah.
early on, especially. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
All righty. Shane Connuck joining us on the show today. NASCAR Championship done and gone. I'm going to get your thoughts on the format first because Corey Heim barely sneaks out Friday night. Connor Zilic doesn't win. And I would say less controversies, more so with the format with Sunday's race because I'm a fan of the 36 race, just full points format. And if you go by that, Kyle Larson ends up winning the whole thing. But it just felt Sunday was so deflating with Kyle Larson not leading a lap and still winning the championship. So what are your thoughts on the format, and what way do you think they go after this season?
I think it's going to go to a kind of 3-3-4 type of deal. I think it's going to kind of start to be thought about the way when you have a 7-game series or a 5-game series or even a 3-game series in other sports, that it'll be the ideas of the 3-race round of 16, round of 12, round of 8 that we have now. It's going to become more where you have 3 races, another 3 races, and then a truly best of 4 round after that, where the points work in such a way where you could win multiple races and maybe not be the champion and create even more question marks there, and something that it's hard to even understand now. But I feel that the full season championship, we're not at a point, they're not going to go back to that. It feels like
Yeah.
they value the postseason. The teams do, from a ability for a team to make it to the playoffs and the money that each race team makes there. It feels like they're not going to want to lose that. But with as many question marks as decide every single championship, I mean, I just feel that with the past couple of years, and you look at Team Penske, and now look at the fact that Ryan Blaney ended up bringing that number 12 car to victory lane at Phoenix, and Brad Keselowski had a lot of speed with his Ford at the end, and that maybe it really just has been the past few years that the tracks have really lined the playoff system has really lined up for Team Penske. And that now this year, seeing the Hendrick versus Gibbs feeling like it's strength on strength, but at the same time, we still saw those Fords dominate in this particular championship race. And so I think the playoff format change is long overdue, and that it's going to be kind of a 3-3-4 and start to feel more like just three of their own rounds being the NASCAR playoffs and still start with the final 10 weeks of the season.
So with the 3-3-4 format, how would that work? Like, would less drivers get in when it comes to cuts? Like, would it go 12-8-4, or would 16 cars still make the playoff there?
I think it'll still be 16 cars that make the playoffs. I think they're not going to want, unless I could also see it though that they want to make it more of an accomplishment to make the playoffs because fewer drivers are being eliminated every round. And yeah, no, actually, I'm gonna reverse that right there. No, I think they're gonna have the playoff field have maybe 12 cars and then have it shrink down and then have those four races. You still are always gonna have the rest of the field on the track. But again, that's similar to the other playoffs, is just that that championship round is a round of, I think, four races instead of being a singular race championship.
Yeah, and I mean, I get the 3-3-4, and I'm not opposed to it. But would the win and in still be a factor when it comes to the 3-3-4 format?
Yeah, well, yeah, because then it gets complicated because what happens with the four, and then how do
Yeah.
you? So if you advance in the other rounds because you win a race,
I
then
just
yeah.
meant to like get into the playoffs, like regular
Oh yeah,
season.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I would say it should. Yeah, or actually, yeah. Now that I'm gonna run into that too because then you're gonna have too many. We already are sometimes having more than 16 guys win races.
Yeah, I think it was 14 different drivers one race, maybe 15. But it's just a crazy thing to think of, and I don't know. I don't get paid enough to even think about what the format should be or what they're gonna do or how it even works. But we'll get into the race on Sunday. Denny Hamlin seems like he's got it in the bag. He struggled a little bit and still worked his way back up to the front, and then that caution with 3 to go. It seemed like it was over right there, and like I said earlier, Kyle Larson wins, doesn't lead a lap, and everybody just seems sad, deflated. Kyle Larson obviously happy, but even he said like, this still kind of sucks a little bit. But what's the feeling around Denny Hamlin's camp? Obviously, he said he's not committed to racing next year. What do you think happens with him going forward?
Yeah, I think we're going to see Denny Hamlin back in the number 11 car next year, but that it really was something. Now, first, personally, I felt Kyle Larson was winning this championship all along.
Yeah,
And I felt that despite everything about Hamlin, I felt the longer he leads, the more something's going to happen. And that is what went down. And so it's just as deflating as it is. I also unfortunately have realized that that's a lot of what the sport's kind of become. That if you're leading the race in the second stage, even later on, it just is you're inviting the opportunity, especially with how much Hamlin was when, and it gets more and more complicated with how much he beat William Byron every single time they had restarted or come close throughout the championship race. But again, how often does the best car end up in victory lane over the past few years with the way the sport is? So I feel like with how not only championships have gone, but how the sport's been, it was somewhat expected that it was going to be an overtime, especially when you get into overtime, that it was going to be somebody else, and that Hamlin would really have a lot of room, to work through on coming off of pit road at the end. And as it turns out, Kyle Larson with a third place finish, like you said, doesn't lead a lap and is the champion. And so obviously change to this format long overdue, but I think it doesn't take away from Kyle Larson being a two-time Cup Series champion. I mean, a couple of years ago in 2023, he really had one of the best years in the sport and contended in the championship four and just ended up behind Ryan Blaney and obviously the leader Ross Chastain in that 2023 championship race. And so there wasn't much that made Kyle not the champion 2 years ago. Last year, Kyle with the Indy 500 stuff, and it felt like there was serious momentum that he could become the most popular driver. It felt like this guy could win the championship and just be the best driver the sport's seen in his and become joining historic ranks. And
yeah.
the reality is, I feel like Kyle has continued to win what he has. He's raced in so many different things, and I think his success in NASCAR has really kind of built to this moment of his championship in 2025. So the point just is we see Joey Logano become a 3-time champion, and we understand, even people have different opinions about what that means and what that represents. It still shows the work that the 22 team did to be victorious throughout the playoffs. And so with Kyle Larson really a deserving 2-time champion, regardless of how the race played out itself.
Speaking of Denny Hamlin and all things going on in NASCAR, I read the headline the other day. I was at ECU basketball covering the season opener, and I just saw the headline, didn't read much of it, but federal judge rules in favor of Michael Jordan in 23-11 over NASCAR. Is this case over? Like, is it done, or is there more to come?
Oh, there's more to come. There is more to come. And so we are heading now, heading toward that December 1st day, as 2311 and Front Row Motorsports are hoping to keep their charters, hoping to have those charters in the Cup Series in the future. Now, there's a lot going on NASCAR's side, as well, because the idea is that, you have, NASCAR itself is trying to move this thing along just as much, is trying to, really feels that you've had these race teams that are trying to hold themselves back and just try. And so it is something that really, I think, there's December 1st is that big date to watch out for. If certain things don't get resolved by then, there's a lot that could be unraveling over there within the next month.
I feel like I ask you this every time you join us. What happens if they lose their charter? I'm just very confused about the whole charter thing.
Yeah, for now it would be that the way I understand it, it's like a franchise in a sport. And so it's the idea is that in the other leagues you have every franchise, and if they can't sustain, they don't have enough money to, you see what happens. Somebody else will buy the team, maybe they relocate them, rebrand them, but the franchise exists. And so it feels like it actually moves into the possibility that NASCAR has 38 cars on the track or 40 cars on the grid, and that they're going to have 37 cars on the grid. Races that'll have 34 cars will have 31, 32 cars. Because if that is actually what it comes to, NASCAR can say, you know what? You are doing this. We are bigger than, and that they, again, the way the teams are operating is that they will risk losing their charters because they don't feel they've been treated fairly. And NASCAR, at the end of the day, still has that power, that monopolistic power, as it's been to which it's been referred. And so it feels like it literally is that removal of charters would mean fewer cars on the grid.
Wow. That's great. I mean, just to be like, oh, Michael Jordan doesn't have enough money to sustain his team is kind of crazy. But well, Shane, thanks for joining us today. Know you're busy, man. I'm busy as well, so appreciate you making the time to join us today. Before we let you go, just let the people know where they can find your work.
CharlotteObserver.com, and on X at Shane_Connuck, and IG at Shane Connuck Sports.
All right. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you.